welcome to this video, which is all related to worksheet 2A and making decisions. The concept of making a decision is actually very straightforward. It is easy to give you the concept of it. It's much more useful to work through the mechanics of how you would code it and how the syntax works. So our aim in this video is basically, how do we make a decision? So for example, when we're making a decision, essentially you think of a flowchart symbol, you have a question of some kind. And when you're making a decision, you could go this way or you could go that way. I mean, that's if there are only two options, but in reality, you can have many different branches from a particular point. This is the central logic behind making a decision in software. And the key word is obviously if. And with Java, you end up using lots of brackets. So if this condition is some value or is true or some setup, then you would go this way, for example. If this was false, then you would probably go this way. So that's a very simple piece of logic. The if statement builds up and gets more complicated, mainly because you have several different options. So you can say, well, if this, then do this, else if some other condition, then do that, or else, none of those are true, then do that. So you can get these blocks of code to look at various different options. From your point of view, perhaps the crucial element is to bear in mind this. When you use the if keyword, the stuff that goes in the bracket is called a condition, and it will always return either true or false. And that's critical to understanding how you code it. Okay, so whatever you put inside here, if you're saying if there's a variable called age and you're saying if it equals, say, 3, right? If that is true, then you would follow the code with the squiggly brackets immediately after, for example. So this condition, you're always checking if it is true. And that's really fundamental to the logic and the thinking process. And what we'll have here in the next series of videos are things called logical operators, so you can have more complex versions of stuff going on in here. And you'll also end up combining this with looping at some point as a way of controlling loops. And it is fundamental. What makes Java slightly tricky is that you have more squiggly brackets than you would have in other languages, and you have different ways of saying, is the age the same as 3? Use 2 equal signs, for example. So we're going to work our way through a worked problem, and let's have a look at it. So the problem says you want to write a program that takes in the user age, and then depending on the value, you offer a number of discounts. This is just, chat. Here are the rules. If the age is less than 18, they get a 30% discount. If the age is between those 2 points, then inclusive, bear that in mind because that will make a difference to 45%. So what our program really wants to do is the input is to take in an age. It's got to use this to calculate what the discount is, and it needs to output that. Okay, so let's code this in the worksheet. Right, first of all, we want to get input. In the worksheet, I give you some code to adapt, but we're going to approach this slightly differently. So we get scanner. Now, what you might notice is I've installed a plugin to IntelliJ called Tab9. Tab9 is an artificial intelligence code completing piece of software. So basically, if you have from previously that import statement scanner, and you start typing in scanner here, because the line you want to write is scanner equals new scanner, etc., it will complete that whole line. It'll through artificial intelligence guess that that's what you're trying to do. So you can simply, it'll speed up your coding. And the only thing you might want to do is just change that word. I've been using the word input, but that's absolutely fine. Right now, I've also kept this window down here open, so it keeps on informing me about errors. Input isn't used, that's why it's grayed out at the moment. I've got a bracket and I've got a closed bracket problem. Look at this. If I highlight, that's my opening bracket for the class. It should have an end, which it does, right? There's no other thing. That's my closed bracket for the actual function. So it's expecting here a bracket. Now, what's missing? What the code completion doesn't tell you is that actually, in order to use it, we do system.in. Okay, so we just go and grab system.in. Notice it'll also complete the line for you if you take that. And it'll nicely... Tab9 is a good plugin for IntelliJ. That's what it's called. And feel free to install it and give yourself a little bit more help when you're trying to code. Anyway, that's our input object that we're going to have, right? We now want to give a prompt to the outside world, and here's a trick, you know, by spelling out what you're expecting. So we want a prompt, and what's the prompt going to be? A system out message, and thanks to tab 9 it gives me most of the line, except for the semicolon at the end, so it speeds my coding up. Okay, so I want to say, please enter your age. Okay, put a colon in with a space, so when that appears, that will be the place you will prompt. Then you want to receive an integer. Okay, so if you remember the logic of this code, we have to store it somewhere. So we're going to call it in value, or we could actually just simply call it age, because that's what we're expecting. We're going to take our input, and that's if you look down on the code completion, it's not the first one, it's actually the second one, and it even adds in, as I say. And the easiest way is to use your down arrows and tab, and that will, oh, and I did that and I got the wrong one. Right, now let's try that again. So down arrow, up arrow, tab. There we go. It then will speed up your coding. Okay, the reason that I'm encouraging tab 9 and using code completion is that you'll get less immediate feedback if your code stops working because you've got an error. So the environment, the choice of choosing IntelliJ, which is more complex, is that it's there to support you. It's currently saying that the variable age isn't being used. Well, that's fine. I'm just simply putting a value in it. Okay, so I've got my age. Now I need to work out the discount. Okay, so let's just get that right. So how do I do that? Well, we said they're if statements. So let's look at the syntax of it. You write the if statement. You have, and notice with tab 9, it's very helpfully spotted that age is the most likely variable. So I'll just select that, tab it. Now, what value of age? What's the condition for the first discount? If it's less than 18, right? So less than sign 18. It doesn't say include 18. It just says less than 18. So if that's the condition, then I put a squiggly bracket at the end and hit enter. When I hit enter, it adds the closing bracket, the opening bracket and the closing bracket. In there, I will put the code for the discount based on this particular condition. So what do I want to put in here? I want to have another variable actually, and the discount is just going to be whole numbers. So if I just call it discount, I'll set it to 0 just to initialize it. If it's less than 18, the rule says the discount has to be 30%. So from our point of view, we're just going to assign that to 30%. Okay, so that's if it's less than 18. But what happens if it's, the other condition is if it's between 18 and 13. Now, we don't simply write another if statement and then repeat the procedure from above, because we don't need to cover this scenario. when we get to this where my cursor is flashing now, it means that condition returned false. So what's left to check? Well, if age is greater than or equal to 18, and then you have to combine it, right? So, and less than 30. Now, rather than combine it, let's be clever. What happens if I write this? If it's less than, let's have a look at the condition, 30, and it's inclusive. So it's less than or equal to 30. Open a squiggly bracket, hit enter. Now, notice, oh, there's an if statement. I really want to have if else, okay? Or else if. Thank you very much for pointing out. Let's get rid of that, get my syntax right, okay? And no, it is using the long language. There needs to be a space in there, right? Okay, so look at this. This checks all the values below 18. If that returns false, then when I arrive at this if statement, technically everything below 18 has been checked. So just by putting in less than or equal to 30, I'm not checking everything less than. I'm not checking the value 10, because if I had 10 as the age, that would have already carried that out and it wouldn't go to this one. If I had 17, it would go here, return that discount, right? Set that up. So this, although this looks like I'm only covering the top end, look at the logic of it. This has covered everything up to 18, but not 18. So this will cover everything from 18 to 30, what's left over. So what's the discount here? And the discount is 45. Okay, so there's a 45% discount. And then what's the last condition here? If the age is over 30. So that's pretty much everything else. So we don't even have to specify over 30, because it just means everything else. So if we add a squiggly bracket at the end of that, it puts the close bracket, and then that discount will be 25. Now, this is quite important what I've just done, okay? And what I'm going to also do here is squeeze this stuff into single lines, because this is just a single line of code. So I can just illustrate to you how to do it. I'm deliberately keeping the curly brackets because it's important you learn to do it. So look at this. If I just tab it across so we can line this up and you can see, hopefully help you see the various different pieces of code next to each other. This is a huge advantage of Java. Let's shift that over so it all lines up, right? So it helps you see the code in a slightly different way, because you can do this, because it's got carried return. So look at the way that if statement is constructed. If the age is less than 18, that's the discount. These curly brackets are executed if that condition is true. If that condition fails, we come into here. So every number which is greater than or equal to 18 and less than 30, that will be your discount. Otherwise, everything else will just be 25. So all we need now is just an output statement. Okay, so we have a system out, system.out, print line, and in there I'm going to say discount is space plus sign, and the variable I want to put in here is the word discount, and I can do that and it'll give me my code completion, will add my semicolon. So very, very simple program. You should build this and test it, but pay attention to how this is constructed. This is the heart of this week's material, how if statements work. I've deliberately arranged it so it's all nicely lined up to help you visualize and see. There's the condition, that's the code you execute. There's the condition, that's the code you execute. There's the remaining condition, that's the code you execute. If that is true and you execute that code, all of the rest of it will be ignored. If that's false, it'll ignore that and it'll ask that question. If that's true, it executes that and then it leaves that alone. Pay attention to how that mechanism works. It's fairly straightforward in some ways, but it's very important that you pay attention. So let's run our if statement, our program. Hit the play button, hit run. And let's see what happens. Down at the bottom, it's building the code. If you can see that, please enter your age. So let's put 18. Discount is 45. Does that agree with the rules? The rules are if it's less than 18, okay, 18 is not less than 18. The age is between 18 inclusive, 45, that looks correct. So that is a very simple program. Now, what you're going to be doing in a later session is you're going to put this into a loop and repeat it so you can ask it a number of times. So don't delete this code. I would play with this. I would see if there are any obvious variations that you can have a look at. Glance through the worksheet to have a look at how it works, and compare the code in the worksheet for this if statement with the if statement I've provided for you here. They are different, and there's an importance to appreciate what the difference is.